"Let me say it again," Daniel said, loud and proud. "Not everybody can work in the company where I work. Not everybody can even enter that building." He didn't even say the company name like a normal person. He stretched it. Slowly, like the name was gold and his tongue was the only one worthy to touch it. The living room in Surulere went quiet so fast it felt like somebody pressed a mute button on the whole house. Not the normal kind of quiet. This one was heavy, like air that forgot how to move. Elizabeth stood near the doorway, her hands clasped in front of her. Her fingers were tight. Too tight, she could feel her own heartbeat inside her palms. Across the room, her brother Daniel was smiling like he had just won something. He held his glass cup like he was giving a speech at an award show. Their father, Mr. Adebayo, nodded like a king approving his best soldier. Their mother gave a small laugh, soft, sharp, and tired at the same time. Elizabeth's older sister, Ifeoma, rolled her eyes, but she still smiled because in that house you could roll your eyes and still join the mockery. It was a kind of family sport. And then Daniel's eyes landed on Elizabeth. That pity smile appeared, the one Elizabeth hated most. "And you, Elizabeth," he said, dragging her name the way people drag a weak suitcase. "How is your husband? Jacob, right? The quiet one." Elizabeth didn't answer right away, not because she didn't know what to say, because she knew exactly what he wanted. He wanted her to feel small in front of everybody. He wanted her to turn red, to explain, to defend Jacob, to beg for respect, like it was something he could hand out. But Elizabeth had learned something over the years. If you react, they win. So she just looked at Daniel, calm on the outside, even though something inside her was shaking. Jacob was sitting on the far end of the couch, not in the middle, not where attention lives, far end. Quiet. His clothes were simple, as usual, a plain black polo, clean but not flashy, faded jeans, brown sandals that looked like they had seen many roads and didn't care. His face showed nothing dramatic, just calm, like a deep river, still on top, strong underneath. Daniel chuckled and took a sip of malt from his glass cup like he was enjoying his own joke. "You know," Daniel continued, "some people have husbands that are loud. You can see their life, you can see their level, you can see their progress." He paused and looked around, waiting for laughter. The laughter came, small, mean and sweet, like bad sugar. "And some people," Daniel said, turning back to Elizabeth, "marry a man that looks like he is still looking for direction." Elizabeth's mother sighed like Elizabeth's marriage was a painful headache. Elizabeth's father didn't even look at her. He was staring at the TV that wasn't on. It was his favorite way to punish her. Silence, like she didn't exist. Elizabeth's chest tightened. She swallowed. Jacob didn't move. He didn't frown. He didn't defend himself. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at Daniel the way a grown man looks at a child jumping and shouting in the rain. Daniel leaned forward, excited now. "You people should have seen our new office floor," he said. "Glass walls, security everywhere, and the kind of place that makes you stand straight even if you have bad posture." He laughed. "I won't lie," he added. "When I walk in, I feel important. Like, yes, I have arrived." He looked at Elizabeth again. "Elizabeth, you remember when you used to act like you were the smartest among us? Remember?" The room warmed with quiet smiles. Like everyone was enjoying a movie. Elizabeth kept her face steady, but her mind was flashing back. Back to the years when she used to be the one who cooked rice for everybody when their mother was tired. Back to the years when she used to share her school books with Daniel because he kept losing his own. Back to the years when she used to defend him when their father shouted at him. Funny how people forget your kindness when they think you have no money. Daniel snapped his fingers. "Anyway," he said, "I didn't call this family meeting for jokes." Elizabeth's stomach dropped a little. A family meeting. That phrase always meant trouble. In that house, family meetings were not about love or support. They were about judgment. They were about who was winning in life and who was failing. Daniel straightened his shoulders and began pacing like a politician. "I have news," he announced. "Big news." Elizabeth's mother leaned forward, interested now. Their father finally looked up. Daniel smiled wider. "There is a major restructuring happening at my company." He said my company the way people say my kingdom. And the rumor is, Daniel continued, lowering his voice, some departments will be shut down, some people will be transferred, some people will be let go. The room reacted immediately. Their mother gasped, "Ha! Daniel, are you safe?" Their father's eyes narrowed. Which department? Ifeoma sucked her teeth. These companies don't have conscience. Elizabeth stayed still. Jacob stayed still too. But his eyes shifted slightly, like he had heard something important. Daniel lifted his hand like, "Relax, everyone, I'm in control." "Calm down," he said. "I'm not just safe, I'm favored." He smiled and tapped his chest. "I'm actually being considered for something bigger. A promotion, maybe even a transfer abroad." Their mother clapped quietly. "Oh my God." Their father's mouth lifted into a proud smile. "Good," he said. "That is what a man should be doing." Daniel nodded, enjoying the praise like warm food. Then he turned to Elizabeth again. "Always her." "But," Daniel said slowly, "there's a problem." Elizabeth's heart pressed against her ribs. She Daniel sighed like a hero carrying the weight of the world. "Some people in my team," he said, "are threatened." He paused. "They keep asking questions. They keep probing. They keep acting like they want to sabotage my chance." Ifeoma frowned. "Why?" Daniel spread his hands. "Jealousy," their mother hissed. "People are wicked." Daniel nodded again and then smiled. But the smile wasn't happy, it was sharp. "So I came here today because I need something," he said. Their father leaned forward. "What do you need?" Daniel looked at Elizabeth, not at their father, not at their mother. At Elizabeth, and then, like he was throwing a stone, he said it. "I need a connection." The room blinked. "A connection," their mother repeated. Daniel nodded. "A strong connection, somebody with real influence, somebody who can speak to the top people. So my name is protected. So nobody touches me." Ifeoma laughed. "Daniel, you are already working there. Isn't that enough?" Daniel shook his head. "No, you don't understand. This level is a jungle." Then he looked at Elizabeth again and said, very softly but clearly, "And you, Elizabeth? You have none." A few people chuckled. Elizabeth didn't. Her fingers tightened again. Daniel walked closer to her, still smiling. "I mean, let's be honest," he said. "If Jacob was a real man, a real somebody, he would have something. A title, a name, something that people respect." He glanced toward Jacob like Jacob was furniture. "But you're Jacob." Daniel sighed dramatically. "He looks like a man that apologizes when the bus conductor shouts at him." The room laughed louder this time. Elizabeth's ears got hot. She wanted to speak. She wanted to shout. She wanted to say, "You don't know him. You don't know anything." But she didn't. Because Jacob had warned her a long time ago in their small apartment in Yaba when she first cried after a family insult. He had wiped her tears with his thumb and said calm and simple, "Let people show you who they are when they think you have nothing. Don't stop them." Elizabeth had asked him, "Why are you like this? Why do you live so quietly?" Jacob had smiled a little, not proud, not loud, and he had said, "Money is loud, character is louder, but character speaks in silence." Elizabeth didn't fully understand then. She did now. Daniel was still talking. "So," he said, "I thought, maybe your husband knows someone. Maybe he can help. Because if he can't even help with something small like this, then—" Daniel shrugged. "What exactly is the point?" Elizabeth finally spoke. Her voice was steady, but there was pain inside it. "Daniel," she said, "Jacob is not the kind of person that talks about what he has." Daniel laughed. "What he has? Elizabeth, please." Their father now spoke, his voice deep and cold. "Elizabeth," Mr. Adebayo said, "this is why we tried to warn you. You married emotion, you married pity, you did not marry sense." Elizabeth flinched like the words slapped her. Their mother sighed again. "My daughter, we are tired. Every time you come here, it's like we are seeing disappointment." Ifeoma added, "At least if he was rich, we would endure the quietness." Someone at the back, an uncle, muttered, "Maybe he is a prayer warrior." More laughter. Jacob sat there, quiet, still, But Elizabeth noticed something. His jaw tightened. And just slightly. Not anger, more like decision. Elizabeth turned her head a bit and caught Jacob's eyes. He gave her a small look. A look that said, "It's okay." A look that said, "Not yet." And Elizabeth remembered something else too. The strange phone calls Jacob sometimes took outside, the way he would step into the balcony, speak softly, and return like nothing happened. The way he never checked price tags in stores, even though he dressed simple. The way he once paid for a stranger's hospital bill in Lagos Island without blinking. Then told Elizabeth, "Don't talk about it." But none of those things were proof, not to her family. To them, proof was a loud car, a designer belt, a bragging mouth. Daniel snapped his fingers again. "So," he said, "here is the plan. Since we are family, we will all contribute to help me strengthen my position." Their mother nodded immediately. "Yes." Their father nodded too. "We will do what we can." Daniel looked around and began calling amounts like he was reading a shopping list. "Auntie Bose, 50,000. Uncle Tayo, 100,000. Ifeoma, you know you must do more. You work in a bank." Ifeoma sighed but nodded. "Okay." Then Daniel turned to Elizabeth. His smile returned, the pity smile again. "And you, Elizabeth," he said, "since you married love and silence, bring—" "What?" "10,000. The room laughed again. Elizabeth's face stayed calm, but her eyes stung. Jacob finally spoke. Just one sentence, soft, clear. "No," he said. The laughter stopped slowly. Daniel blinked. "Excuse me." Jacob looked at Daniel. "I said no." Daniel's face changed. The proud smile dropped into something ugly. "So you can't help your wife's family?" Daniel asked, louder now. "Or is it that you don't have?" Jacob didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult him. He just said, "This is not the way." Their father slammed his hand on the armrest. "Which way?" Mr. Adebayo barked. "You are in my house, talking like you are the one giving instruction." Jacob turned his eyes to Mr. Adebayo politely. "I respect your home," Jacob said, "but I won't pay into fear." Daniel laughed, sharp and bitter. "Fear," he repeated. "So you want me to lose my job? You want me to suffer?" Jacob's voice stayed calm. "If your job can only be protected by bribes and begging," he said, "then it's not protection, it's slavery." Silence, real silence. Even the standing fan sounded louder now, and Elizabeth's mother stared at Jacob like he had spoken a forbidden language. Ifeoma whispered, "This man." Daniel stepped forward, angry now. "You see why I say you married wrong?" Daniel snapped at Elizabeth. "See your husband. He doesn't know how life works." Elizabeth opened her mouth, but Jacob raised one hand gently, not to shut her down, to steady her. Then Jacob did something unexpected. He reached into his pocket and brought out his phone. Not in a dramatic way. Just normal. He looked at the screen. Then he looked up, and for the first time in that room, his eyes were not quiet. They were firm. "Daniel," Jacob said, "what is the name of the company you work for?" Daniel scoffed. "Why?" Jacob's thumb hovered over his phone. "Just say it," Jacob said. Daniel laughed, but there was a small shake in it now. He said the name. Slowly. "I proudly, like always." Jacob nodded once, then he tapped his screen and put the phone to his ear. Elizabeth's breath held without her permission because she knew something was about to happen, and she didn't know if she was ready. The phone rang, once, twice, then someone picked up. Jacob's voice changed slightly, not louder, not proud, but professional, like a man stepping into a role he was born for. "Good evening," Jacob said. "Put me through to the group managing director." Daniel frowned. "Wait." Jacob didn't look at him. He listened, nodded, and said one more sentence into the phone. "Yes." "Tell him Jacob Adderwale is on the line." The room didn't just go quiet, it froze. Because the way Jacob said that name, it didn't sound like a poor man trying to impress anybody. It sounded like a key turning inside a lock. On Daniel's face, his face began to change, like he recognized something he didn't want to recognize, like his entire confidence was suddenly standing on one weak leg. Then Jacob's phone speaker gave a small crackle. A different voice came on, older, respectful, careful. "Good evening, sir," the voice said. "Good evening, Chairman. Elizabeth's stomach dropped. Chairman. Daniel staggered backward a little, almost like he had been pushed. His glass cup tilted. Malt spilled on the rug. Nobody moved to clean it. Nobody even blinked. Because Jacob, quiet Jacob, was still holding the phone to his ear. And that one word, chairman, was now sitting in the room like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. Elizabeth's mother's lips parted. Her father's eyes widened. Daniel's voice came out small, almost like a child. Jacob, he whispered. What is this? Jacob didn't answer Daniel, not yet. He listened to the voice on the phone and said, calm and controlled, tell me the truth. Is there a restructuring, and is my name being used inside that company like a weapon? The room leaned into silence, waiting for the answer, waiting for the explosion. And on the phone, the man's voice trembled slightly as he replied, Sir, yes, and we have been trying to reach you for days. It's about Daniel Adebayo. Elizabeth's heart jumped. Daniel's eyes widened so much they looked like they could fall out. Jacob's face didn't change. But his next words were low, sharp, and final. Good, he said. Now put it in writing. And do not move anybody until I give the next instruction. He ended the call, and the silence that followed was so loud it felt like shouting. Jacob slowly put his phone back into his pocket. Then he looked at Daniel. And Daniel, who had been boasting minutes ago, could not even hold Jacob's eyes. Because the room had just discovered something they were never supposed to know. Something Elizabeth had been living with quietly, a secret that could flip the whole family upside down. Jacob spoke again softly. Daniel, he said, you have been shouting about a building you don't own. Daniel's mouth opened. No words came out, and Elizabeth watched her family's faces, one by one, shift from pride to confusion, to fear. Because in that moment, they all realized something terrifying. They had been insulting the wrong man. And now, the man they mocked had their future in his hand, and he still hadn't explained anything. Not yet. Nobody spoke for a long time. The silence was not peaceful. And it was sharp. It cut. Elizabeth's mother was the first to move. She reached for the edge of the sofa, like the ground had suddenly become unstable. Chair. Man, she said slowly, tasting the word. Jacob. What does that mean? Daniel still hadn't recovered. His eyes were fixed on Jacob, wide and confused, like a student who just realized the exam paper was written in a language he didn't understand. Jacob didn't answer immediately. That was his habit. He never rushed words. Instead, he looked around the room. Really looked. At the faces, the reactions. The fear trying to hide behind forced smiles. Then he spoke. Daniel, Jacob said calmly, how long have you worked there? Daniel swallowed. 4 years. Jacob nodded. And in 4 years, you never asked who owned the company. Daniel laughed nervously. Sir, nobody meets the owner. Oh, it's a board thing. Jacob raised his hand gently, not to silence him, to slow him down. That company, Jacob said, was started 15 years ago, in a small office in Ikeja, 1 table, 2 chairs, and a generator that failed more than it worked. Elizabeth felt her chest tighten. She had heard parts of this story before. Late at night, quietly, when Jacob thought nobody needed to know. Jacob continued, I was tired of seeing people cheated. Tired of seeing talent wasted because someone didn't have connections. So I built something different. He looked at Daniel again. And you work there? Daniel's knees bent slightly. He sat down without meaning to. Elizabeth's father finally found his voice. So, Mr. Adebayo said carefully, you are saying you own... Jacob didn't let him finish. Yes, he said. I own it. The words landed softly, but the effect was violent. Elizabeth's mother gasped loudly and covered her mouth. Ifeoma stood up. No, this must be a joke. Daniel shook his head over and over. No, that's not possible. Jacob reached into his pocket again. He didn't like doing this. Elizabeth knew that. But tonight, silence was no longer enough. He placed his phone on the center table and unlocked it. On the screen was an email. Official, clean, clear. From Board Secretariat Subject, Chairman's Directive. Jacob turned the screen toward them. Nobody touched it. Nobody breathed. I didn't want this life, Jacob said quietly. I wanted peace, simplicity. I wanted to know who loved us when there was nothing shiny to distract them. Elizabeth's mother began to cry, not loud, just quiet tears slipping down her face. I didn't know, she whispered. Elizabeth, I didn't know. Elizabeth didn't move, because knowing now didn't erase the past. Daniel suddenly stood up again, panic rising. Sir, Jacob, I didn't mean, please, everything I said was just family talk. Jacob looked at him, calm but firm. You called your sister a disappointment, Jacob said. You mocked your own blood. You laughed while she swallowed pain. Daniel's voice broke. I was joking. No, Jacob replied. You were honest. That hurt more. Elizabeth's father cleared his throat. His voice was weaker than usual. Jacob, he said, as the head of this family. Jacob looked at him. You were never a head to her, Jacob said gently. You were a judge. That sentence hit Elizabeth harder than anything else, because it was true. Jacob picked up his phone again. There is a restructuring, he said, and Daniel's name did come up. Daniel froze. But not because of jealousy, Jacob continued, because of complaints, arrogance, abuse of junior staff, using my company name to threaten people. Daniel collapsed back into the chair. I can fix it, he begged. I can change. Jacob nodded slowly. Maybe. But tonight is not about fixing you. He turned to Elizabeth, and for the first time the room noticed something strange. Jacob didn't look powerful. He looked tired. Elizabeth, he said softly, do you want me to continue? Elizabeth's lips trembled. She looked at her family, at the people who raised her, at the people who broke her quietly. She shook her head. Not yet, she said. Jacob nodded, and that scared them more than anything, because mercy delayed is heavier than punishment. Jacob stood up. I think we should leave, he said to Elizabeth. Daniel shot up. Leave? Like this? Jacob looked at him once. Yes, he said, like this. Elizabeth took Jacob's hand, and as they walked toward the door, Elizabeth heard her mother whisper something that chilled her spine. If we had known, we would have treated her better. Elizabeth stopped walking. Slowly she turned back, and she asked a question that nobody was ready for. Better, Elizabeth repeated softly. The word felt strange in her mouth. The room looked at her, shocked, waiting. Elizabeth walked back into the center of the living room. Jacob stayed by the door, watching her carefully, trusting her. You mean, Elizabeth said, her voice calm but cracked, you would have treated me better if you knew my husband was rich? Nobody answered, because the answer was obvious. Elizabeth nodded slowly. Tears filled her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. That's the problem, she said. That's the sickness. Her mother stood up, shaking. My daughter, forgive us. Elizabeth looked at her, really looked. You never asked if I was happy, Elizabeth said. Not once. You only asked if I was embarrassed. Daniel buried his face in his hands. Elizabeth turned to him. You used your job like a weapon, she said. You needed me to be small, so you could feel tall. Daniel cried openly now, loud, messy. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't know. Elizabeth shook her head. You knew, she replied. You just didn't care. Jacob finally spoke again. Elizabeth, he said gently, we can go. Elizabeth took a deep breath, but before she moved, her father spoke. His voice was low, broken. I failed you, he said. I taught this family to respect success more than character. That admission felt heavier than money. Elizabeth nodded once. This story teaches something, she said slowly. True worth is not noise. It's not clothes. It's not titles. It's how you treat people when you think they can't help you. Jacob stepped forward and stood beside her. We are leaving now, he said. Not forever, but long enough. Daniel looked up, fear flooding his face. What about my job? He asked. Jacob paused. Then he said, that depends on what you become when nobody is clapping. Elizabeth squeezed Jacob's hand. They walked out together. Behind them, the family sat in silence. Not proud silence, not mocking silence, but the kind that forces people to face themselves. And outside, as the gate closed, Elizabeth finally let the tears fall, but this time, they were not tears of shame, they were tears of release. Because Elizabeth did not know this yet, But the decision Jacob would make next about Daniel would shake the family even harder than the truth itself, and not everyone would survive it with their pride intact. 3 days passed, no calls, no apologies, no sudden family visits. Elizabeth noticed that silence too. Silence has different meanings. Sometimes it means peace, sometimes it means fear. This one meant fear. Their apartment in Yaba was quiet that morning. Not sad quiet, just still. Jacob sat at the small dining table, reading a thin brown file. Elizabeth watched him from the kitchen, pretending to wash cups that were already clean. She knew that look on his face. Decision mode. "Is it about Daniel?" she asked. And Jacob didn't look up. "Yes." Elizabeth dried her hands slowly and sat opposite him. What did he do now? Jacob slid the file across the table. Inside was a formal report. Complaints, dates, names. Elizabeth read silently. A junior staff member threatened. Another humiliated. A third pushed out of the company quietly. Her stomach twisted. "He used your name," she whispered. Jacob nodded. "That's the part that hurts." Elizabeth leaned back, exhaling. "He was always like that," she said. "Just not this powerful." Jacob closed the file. "I built that company to protect people like this," he said, "not to turn them into victims." Elizabeth looked at him carefully. "So what will you do?" Jacob paused. "I wrote him a letter," he said. Elizabeth's heart jumped. "A letter?" Jacob nodded, old-fashioned, clear. "I know shouting." Elizabeth didn't like that. A letter meant finality. Before she could speak, Jacob's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then his face hardened. "They're here," he said. Elizabeth stood up. "Who?" Before Jacob could answer, there was a knock at the door. Not polite, urgent. Elizabeth opened it slowly. Her mother stood there first, eyes red, clothes rushed on. Behind her, Daniel, and behind him, their father, no Ifeoma. That absence spoke loudly. Elizabeth stepped aside. They entered quietly. No jokes, no pride. Daniel's eyes went straight to Jacob. He dropped to his knees. The sound of it echoed in the room. "I'm sorry," Daniel said, crying openly. "I was stupid. I was cruel. Please, please don't destroy me." Elizabeth flinched. Her mother rushed forward. "Jacob, please. And he is still our son." Jacob didn't move. He didn't smile. He didn't shout. He picked up the brown file and placed it gently on the table. "Daniel," Jacob said, "stand up." Daniel hesitated. "Stand up," Jacob repeated. Daniel stood. "You apologized because you were exposed," Jacob continued, "not because you understood." Daniel shook his head wildly. "No, sir." Jacob raised a hand. "You didn't come when Elizabeth cried," Jacob said. "You didn't come when she was insulted in her own home. You came when your job shook." Daniel sobbed harder. Jacob picked up an envelope and held it out. "This is for you." Daniel took it with shaking hands. "What is it?" he asked. Jacob's voice was flat. "Open it." Daniel opened the envelope, his face drained. Elizabeth saw it, a termination notice, immediate. Daniel screamed, "No, no, please. And this is my life." Jacob's voice cracked slightly, just a little. And Elizabeth's dignity was hers. Silence fell. Elizabeth's father sank into a chair. Her mother collapsed beside him, crying loudly now. Daniel crawled forward, grabbing Jacob's trousers. "I'll do anything," he begged. Jacob looked down at him. "Anything?" he asked. Daniel nodded frantically. Jacob leaned down. "Then leave this house," he said, "and rebuild yourself without my name." Daniel froze. Jacob straightened. "You will not use this family. You will not use this company. And you will not hide behind money again." Daniel's breathing came fast and broken. Jacob turned to Elizabeth. "I didn't tell you something," he said. Elizabeth looked up. "There is another option," Jacob added quietly. Daniel looked up sharply. Hope flickered. "And that option," Jacob said, will hurt more than losing your job." Because Daniel didn't know yet, but the second option would force him to face the people he once crushed. Jacob didn't explain immediately. That was his way. He let fear sit, let truth sink, let ego bleed. "You have two paths," Jacob finally said. Daniel listened like a drowning man. Path 1, Jacob continued, you walk away today, quietly, with your shame, no company, no protection. Daniel swallowed hard. Path 2, Jacob said, you stay. Daniel's eyes lit up. I'll stay. Jacob shook his head. You stay, but not as a manager. Daniel's face tightened. You stay as a trainee, Jacob said. Entry level, same floor you once bullied, same desks, same people. Elizabeth's breath caught. Daniel stared. You want me to work under them? Jacob nodded. Under their rules, their reports, their supervision. Daniel's mouth opened, closed. And, Jacob added, your salary will match theirs. No benefits, no special name. Daniel shook his head. They will mock me. Jacob met his eyes. Good, he said. Now you understand Elizabeth. The room felt heavy. Elizabeth watched Daniel's pride break piece by piece. What if I refuse? Daniel asked quietly. Jacob didn't hesitate. Then path 1 stands. Daniel looked at his parents. They didn't speak. For the first time, he was alone. Daniel lowered his head. I accept, he whispered. Jacob nodded once. This story teaches something, Jacob said calmly. Power reveals character, but loss reveals truth. Elizabeth stood and walked toward Daniel. She looked down at her brother, the same boy she once protected. Don't apologize to me again, she said softly. Change. Daniel nodded, crying silently. Jacob opened the door. You leave now, he said. Your letter will come tomorrow. Daniel walked out slowly. The door closed. Elizabeth turned to her parents. They couldn't meet her eyes. Jacob spoke again. This family has a chance, he said, not because of money, but because truth arrived. Elizabeth exhaled deeply, but even as relief settled, a new question hovered in the air. Because Jacob had not told Elizabeth everything yet. There was still one more decision coming, one that would test her heart next. Thank you for watching. What your view about this story? Which city are you watching from? Kindly let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories.